I'm going to help you with your robot challenge and show you the components that you need to start off with. Okay, so I've got an example here, and this is what you're building. So this is a breakout board, and this device is the Arduino, which plugs onto the breakout board. You also have a connector for the battery, switch, you have a fuse with a fuse holder, a diode. Yours will look a bit neater than mine. There is a motor driver underneath here, so if I turn this upside down, there is a motor driver there, and there is a connector for your motor, and I've just connected this to a motor just to test it out. So your battery connected. If you want to just test this one out, you can switch it on, and you should see the motor turning one way and the other. Of course, you might just use a DC motor that's on your buggy. Okay, so you'll need a buggy chassis, which you'll find in there. A battery, which will be provided for you as well, and a red PCB, so you'll grab your PCB. You also need a battery connector, so that's one of these, which connects to your battery. An L298 chip, that's your motor driver chip, which is here. Just be aware when you do take these are static sensitive, so please try not to touch the pins if you can. Don't just keep it in your pocket, it's quite static sensitive. You've got some fuses here, 6-amp fuses, take one of those. There's spares. There is also some sockets for the fuse. Your Arduinos are in a bag in here, and you have some screw terminals here. I recommend you just start off with the 2s, and probably to do a neater job than me, you can put a 2 in there to connect to your battery terminal, and you can put one here for your motor. Also switches, so grab a switch and you should be ready to go. So you might want to start to solder it. Oh, one more component I forgot is a diode. This is a new addition that we've got. So the diode goes here. I've got slightly smaller ones this time. Make sure that it's the correct way around. So the red should go in the direction that you've got a little blank bit there. So it should go that way around. It should match up with the little tab that you've got there. So the power goes through, and that powers your Arduino from your battery when it's not plugged into the USB. Okay, so when you want to solder your Arduino onto the circuit board, basically you want to put some pins in here to allow it to snap into position there. And I'll show you a little trick. So what you want to do is take your little PCB pins, make sure that the long end goes into one of the sets of PCB holes on the Arduino. And then what you can do is just carefully break it off. Don't worry if you do break it off a bit smaller, but that was a fairly good one. So you can break it off like that. So you've got the small ones coming out. These are ones that I've just done earlier, and I'm just going to put them in. So make sure that it's the long end goes into the Arduino, and that will connect your input and output ports to the various bits. So now you should have some short ends like that. Now what you want to do is carefully push that onto your circuit board until it goes all the way home, and you've got your pins sticking out the other side. Carefully solder these along and solder these in, and once they're soldered in, then you should have one that looks like this, where you can then, you know that it's going to fit quite nicely. You can take your Arduino out, you can program it, or you can program it in situ, but if you ever wanted to swap it over, it's quite easy to do that, so you know that it's going to match up nicely. The L298 motor driver, don't forget it goes in the underneath, so basically you take it on your circuit board, turn it upside down, and it will only fit in one direction, so if you're not sure, you can always look at this. Now, this board doesn't have all the screw terminals on as yet. You don't need to populate it with screw terminals. You just want to put these basic bits in, the switch, the fuse, your battery connector, diode to drive your Arduino, and if you want the L298 and then the motor connector. There is also a connector for a servo, so if you want your servo to work, you can get some more of these PCB pins, cut 3 off, make sure that it's the long end sticking out, and then you can solder it on the underneath, and that will be for your steer servo. You also have a LED and some other connectors if you want. So this LED and this resistor will tell you when the 7.2 volt power is on. And there's also a 5 volt power LED, which is here. And that will go with that resistor. So basically, if you want these to work, you need an LED and a resistor. The 180 ohms, it's mentioned on that one. That one is a bit more, 325 ohms, just so it doesn't blow the LED. If you want your I/O ports A0 to A3, for example, then you could either solder directly into there, but what I really recommend you do is get some more screw terminals and you can put them in, like so. Turn it around and then solder it in that way. Of course, the motor on the buggy has got a DC motor to make it drive, so that would go in these parts here, and your steer servo would go in the 3 pins that you've soldered in there. So these are all flexible. You can put in sensors in here. You've also got I2C ports here, which are D4 and D5. If you could read on the I2C, you can see more about it there. I've also brought them out here. So, sorry, it's not D4 and D5, it's A4 and A5. So I've actually highlighted them there. So they are A4 and A5. They can be analog ports or they can be the I2C ports. You've got 3.3 volts, you've got ground, you've got your 5 volt rail here, and you've got more analog ports here, A0 to A3. And that just about covers it. But start off nice and simple, just get your Arduino connected and take it from there.